Hey guys, so today we are answering a subscriber question, and the question in question was, Frederick, how do I get another job after getting terminated for poor performance? So let's get into it. Well, that is a really bad one. I would say that either you will have to lie, or you have to have a very, very, very clear and almost objective level sensation of why you got fired for poor performance. Basically you have to somehow convince your new employer that that issue came from your circumstances. And I mean, it's likely that that happens. There are certainly scenarios that I can imagine where you could work for a company where, I mean, because of poor planning or poor practices. I mean, I've worked for a company where the people in question had, like, the entire company ran on the fact that the people working there were by themselves, just, they were self-sufficient, like self-reliant. It didn't, like, the company almost didn't require any type of leadership, and the reason why it didn't was because they were working on like, each person was just an island in of themselves, and they worked on a consultancy basis. But as soon as and I was part of one of the first projects where they actually tried to make a real product, and they were actually going to introduce leadership into this mix. I mean, the people running the show had no fucking clue whatsoever what they were doing. They ran it as they would run any other other of their projects, and that didn't really work all that well because it was fundamentally a different sort of project with different people. So if that is a possibility for you, or if that is the thing that happened, that sucks. I'm sorry to say, but it is you can salvage that sort of situation. But if it turns out that I mean, I don't want to believe that anybody can get to a point where it's a matter of, everything is just that you are bad at what you do. I mean, of course that is a scenario, but then I would like to state that my suspicion is that you got into the job too quickly, or rather you got into the industry too quickly. And this is one of the reasons I argue that it's equally important for you to have a good understanding of what it means to be a professional software developer. And it's also important from the company's perspective to understand how to screen people correctly so that they don't get this sort of situation. Because now, if you got into this situation, you're in this unfortunate position where the company is frustrated with you because they thought, they had the sensation that, hey, you know what you're doing, and they hired you, and now from their perspective, they invested in you, and now it all fell to shit. And from your perspective, well, you have a big black smudge on your CV. One of the worst smudges that you can have, probably the worst that's possible to have. It's the sort of thing where, it's like a dishonorable discharge. It's something that is a complete deal breaker for quite a few companies if they find out that you're simply no good at what you do. It's very similar to, being rejected from too many companies, or skipping jobs too frequently. It indicates that you are a unstable or unsafe type of person to hire, and that you're likely not going to be able to provide as much value as the next person. And that's something you really, really don't want. And these are one of the, I understand it. And your options, as I said, is to either basically tell the story from the perspective that the reason why you had that issue in the first place was that because of the management at the company, or because of the cooperation between you and whoever was running the show at your last company. And the other option is to lie. Now, I'm not advocating that you should lie, but I understand that a person, it depends on your situation. If you're just programming just because you think it's a little bit fun, or like you could stand to do something else, I understand, then maybe you should look into other options. But I also know that there are people out there in the world that, you need to survive. And maybe programming actually represents the best way for you to do that. And I'd like to believe that people can make mistakes, or can learn from those mistakes and improve themselves. Because let's be honest here, just because you were fired for incompetency or not being productive enough at your last company, that doesn't necessarily mean that you can't do better at your next company. And if you really want to get into this industry and stay in this industry, it's likely that you're going to have to go through that process and stick by it because, well, what is your other option? Your other option is to pick another profession, and maybe that is a feasible strategy for you. Maybe it's not. And, well, as I said, I don't advocate lying, but in this case, I don't see much. I don't see many other options apart from, as I said, if you really can meet if you can really sell the idea that it was a mutual incompatibility, if you will. So what I want you to take away from this is that if you get fired for incompetency or being unproductive, that is about the worst thing that you can get on your CV. It's really bad. And I would either try to avoid even like talking about it with with your future employer. Like, don't even mention it. And I mean, that is a risk in of itself, but it's information that you should not be very transparent about. It's if it's brought up in the interviewing process, then you will have to try to explain to them your perspective on why it happened, or you will have to just lie to their face, basically. I'm sorry to say, because there is no employer out there, or I mean, there might be someone, but very, very few employers would consider would think it's a good thing that you were fired for being incompetent. Even if you're transparent about it, that might actually be a risk because, I mean, let's be honest here. I've worked with some really nice HR people and so forth. And I mean, they're lovely people, but they also have to consider what's best for the company. And although they might appreciate you on a personal level for being completely honest with you, it's still going to be an issue that, all right, you're an honest person, but you can't do the job. Or at least that's what you're saying. Your last employer fired you because you can't do the job. So it's a big gamble to let that sort of information slip when you're in an interview process. And as I'm not telling you to lie. I'm simply stating that if that is your only option, you pretty much have to consider it. Ideally, don't get into a situation where this happens. And this is why I urge you so much. Don't just take any job. Make sure that you know that this is a good investment for you, because if this sort of thing happens, it's going to damage your career long term. And you don't think so, but people are less, like the industry is not, I mean, it's run by humans, and humans get affected, and they have gut feelings and all of that good stuff, and all of that information is going to add up to something on your CV, and it's going to give people a gut feeling. And if you give them a bad gut feeling in the interviewing process, they will not hire you. So remember that. Have a great day.